Years: Goldwater, Hickenlooper, Cotton, Simpson, and Mecham. Barry Goldwater, known for having been a staunch leader of the conservative wing of the Republican Party during the 60s, is often falsely smeared by liberals as a racist for having voted against the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Among such, NPR has propagated mischaracterizations of the Arizona senator that have been refuted. 36 In contrast to whitewashing attempts by deceitful leftists, Goldwater was a strong proponent of civil rights, having voted in favor of the 1957 Civil Rights Act. 17 He had also been a member of the NAACP at the time, and his only opposition to the 1964 bill came from his objections to Titles II and 7 on a constitutional basis in opposing excessive federal government powers. 37-38 stating, 39. It so happens that I am in agreement with the anti-racial segregation objectives of the Supreme Court as stated in the Brown decision. I am not prepared, however, to impose that judgment of mine on the people of Mississippi or South Carolina. That is their business, not mine. I believe that the problem of race relations, like all social and cultural problems, is best handled by the people directly concerned, and should not be affected by engines of national power. Note that this represents Goldwater's firm view that federal and state powers as directed by the Constitution and Bill of Rights should be firmly upheld. While liberals claim he was supposedly a racist, he merely differed from others such as Everett Dirksen in his preferred approach to enacting civil rights. 39. He asserted on the Senate floor on June 19, 1964. 37. I am unalterably opposed to discrimination or segregation on the basis of race, color, or creed, or on any other basis. Not only my words, but more importantly my actions through the years have repeatedly demonstrated the sincerity of my feeling in this regard. I repeat again, I am unalterably opposed to discrimination of any sort, and I believe that though the problem is fundamentally one of the heart, some law can help, but not law that embodies features like these, provisions which fly in the face of the Constitution and which require for their effective execution the creation of a police state. And so, because I am unalterably opposed to any threats to our great system of government and the loss of our God-given liberties, I shall vote no on this bill. This vote will be reluctantly cast, because I had hoped to be able to vote yet on this measure as I have on the civil rights bills which have preceded it, but I cannot, in good conscience to the oath that I took when assuming office, cast my vote in the affirmative. With the exception of Titles II and 7, I could wholeheartedly support this bill, but with their inclusion, not measurably improved by the compromise version we have been working on, my vote must be no. If my vote is misconstrued, let it be, and let me suffer its consequences. Just let me be judged in this by the real concern I have voiced here and not by words that others may speak or by what others may say about what I think. Goldwater furthermore opposed and voted against an amendment introduced by Al Gore, Sr., known as the Gore Amendment, to weaken the bill 4041. Yet liberals attack the Arizona senator rather than Gore despite the latter's record in opposing civil rights. 42. Senators Bork Hickenlooper, Norris Cotton, and Mulward Simpson voted against the final passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act for the same reasons as Goldwater. They were also strong conservatives who believed that while civil rights legislation was a priority and a necessity, parts of the bill would cause federal government overreach. 43-44 Simpson previously had signed a civil rights bill as governor of Wyoming which outlawed segregation in the state. Hickenlooper and Cotton had also voted in favor of invoking cloture to end the Southern filibuster on the 1964 Civil Rights Act. 45. The other non-Southern Republican senator to vote against the final passage of the act, Edwin L. Mecham of New Mexico, stated that his opposition was towards the public accommodations and fair employment sections, saying they could assure the greatest assault on property ownership and private enterprise in this country has known. 46. John Tower/Ralph Yarborough. Some progressive historians including Kevin M. Cruz of Princeton University will note that the liberal Democrat U.S. Senator Ralph Yarborough of Texas voted for the final passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 while his then conservative Note 1 Republican colleague John G. Tower voted against it. 47 Cruz excludes any mention of the Gore Amendment. Yarborough voted for the amendment while Tower voted against it. 41. According to the congressional record, Yarborough justified his stance on education-related grounds. 48 What should be importantly noted, however, were Tower's remarks. The motion is merely another assault on Title VI, which I believe is a good provision of the bill. I think that if we had enacted a separate measure containing the provisions in Title VI some time ago, we would not be asked to enact some of the other measures which we are asked to enact today. I believe that if people in the states and localities are going to accept federal money and federal support, they must not engage in any kind of discrimination which is contrary to federal policy. Therefore, I intend to vote against the motion of the senator from Tennessee. Southern Strategy. For a more detailed treatment, see Southern Strategy. There are several myths surrounding the so-called Southern Strategy, most notably, out-of-context quotes taken from a taped interview with Lee Atwater. The full context of the interview thoroughly refutes liberal deceit that has been perpetuated by leftists. 49. Inconsistencies. See also, liberal logic. The myth of the parties switching is very inconsistent with actual U.S. history. The Republican Party only became much more right-wing during the 1910s, after Theodore Roosevelt and his Republican progressives at the time split with the Taft-supporting conservatives. The Democrat Party arguably, according to some, became much more left-wing during the 1930s during the New Deal coalition era. Progressives who brainwash youth in the modern-day education system, erase in history textbooks examples of certain racist liberals such as Hugo Black. They furthermore ignore the fact that many racist Democrats in the 30s were leftists who fervently supported the New Deal. Note 2 including Theodore Bilbo, Tom Connolly, Claude Pepper. Note 3 Lister Hill, and John Sparkman. It should also be noted liberal Democrat Franklin D. Roosevelt's support came strongest from the Deep South in his election/re-election victories. Anti-lynching legislation. See also, anti-lynching law. Despite insistence by leftists that the Democrat opposition to civil rights legislation, including anti-lynching legislation, was exclusively from conservative/Southern Democrats, it's important to note that the 1937 Govagan-Wagner Bill 50 passed the House with opposition from both the Southern Bloc in addition to 15 Northern Democrats. 51 of those who voted on the legislation by party. It got 96% support from Republicans and only 62% from Democrats. In late July 1937, Senate Democrats successfully tabled an anti-lynching effort twice. On July 26, the Senate voted 41-34 to kill an anti-lynching amendment introduced by Royal S. Copeland of New York 52-53 with the yeas including future Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black and future Vice President Alben Barkley. Over a dozen Northern Democrats voted with the Southern Bloc to kill the amendment. 61% of Democrats voted in favor of tabling. 5 days later, the majority of Senate Democrats, 66% of them, voted yet again to kill the amendment in a 46-39 vote. 54.